Blood on the rented tuxedo, ribs cracking under the heel of a leather shoe, and my own son laughing while I was dragged out of the reception hall. That's the gratitude I received after spending $250,000 on his wedding. My name is Robert Johnson. I'm 71 years old, retired from the bank where I worked for over 35 years as a manager, and I've lived in Columbus, Ohio my entire life. A lifetime built on honesty, hard work, and saving. A life dedicated to my family, especially my only son, Henry. I always thought I'd raised a good man, but life sometimes surprises us in the worst possible ways. If you're enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Leave in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is when you're watching. We have new stories every day here on Grandpa's Voice. And look, the story I'm going to tell today is one of those that makes you wonder how far human ingratitude can go, you know? Especially when it comes from those we love most. You see, I was never a man of luxury or extravagance. From a young age, I learned the value of hard-earned money. My father was a bus driver and my mother a seamstress. We didn't have much, but we never lacked the necessities. When I started at the bank as a mail clerk at 18, I swore to myself that I would move up in life honestly, and I did. I went to college at night, studying economics while working during the day. I climbed from position to position until I became a manager. It was 35 years of dedication, many sleepless nights, weekends doing overtime, all to give my son a better life. Henry always had the best of everything. Private school, language courses, law school at the best university in Columbus. While other parents gave simple 18th birthday presents to their children, I managed to save enough money to give mine a brand new car. All because I wanted him to have what I didn't, for him to start adult life with an advantage. Understand? But as the saying goes, raise a crow and it will peck out your eyes. In my case, it was worse, much worse. And it all began when he met Barbara and her family. That's when my son, whom I'd known since birth, became a stranger before my eyes. But all of this is just the beginning of the story. A story that ended with blood, broken ribs, and a 71-year-old father being humiliated in front of 600 people at a wedding that he himself paid for. I was born and raised right here in Columbus. My father, Anthony, was a driver for those old Greyhound buses. Strict man, but fair. My mother, Teresa, worked at home as a seamstress to help with expenses. We lived in a modest neighborhood, small house but always clean and tidy. We had a vegetable garden in the backyard that helped supplement our meals. My two brothers and I shared the same room, single bed against the wall, old wooden wardrobe that creaked when you opened the door. The smell of beans with garlic and onion perfumed the whole house around noon, when Dad came home for lunch between his routes. I attended public school, spiral notebooks, pencils used until they were just stubs. I always liked math. Had a knack for numbers. By 15, I was already helping my father calculate the monthly bills, dividing his salary, planning expenses. I finished high school and soon found a job as a mail clerk at First National Bank. It was 1969. I was 18 years old and full of determination. I worked all day, and after 3 years of saving, I managed to enroll in college for economics. I studied at night, leaving the bank and going straight to classes, often without having a proper dinner, just a sandwich gulped down on the way. The crowded bus, crumpled notes under my arm, eyes burning with fatigue, but the desire to succeed was stronger. I graduated with distinction in 1976, already working as a teller at the bank, married to Helen, whom I met at the neighborhood church. The routine at the bank was grueling. I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, have a hearty breakfast that Helen prepared, homemade bread with melting butter, coffee with milk, steaming in the enamel mug that I got from my father. I took 2 buses to downtown. I arrived an hour early to organize everything. As a teller, I had to balance the daily cash, do accounting, serve customers, smile, even when some were rude. I returned home at 7 in the evening, often later when I had to close the cash drawer. Over time, I was promoted to supervisor, then assistant manager, and finally manager. In 1980, the salary improved. We bought a better house in the Bexley neighborhood, and in 1985, our son, Henry, was born. Helen and I met at a church retreat in 1974. She was an elementary school teacher, a girl from a simple family like me. Her smile was what won me over. Sincere, It lit up her entire face. We dated for a year, were engaged for 6 months, and married in a simple but beautiful ceremony at St. Rita's Chapel. The reception was in the parish hall, cake made by my mother, finger foods by the aunts. We started life with very little. A rented one-bedroom apartment, used furniture that we received from relatives, but we were happy with what we had. The first years were of great struggle and saving. Helen taught during the day, I worked at the bank. At night, she graded tests while I studied to progress in my career. Our first sofa we bought on installment in 12 payments. Our first television was a gift from my in-laws on our 5th wedding anniversary. We saved every penny, dreaming of owning a home and the children we would have. Unfortunately, we had difficulties having children. Helen got pregnant 3 times before Henry was born, but lost all of them in the first months. Those were difficult times, seeing her suffer that way, crying, hugging the little clothes she had already bought with such hope. We did treatments, saved even more to be able to pay the specialist doctors. When she finally got pregnant with Henry, and the pregnancy passed the 3-month mark, it was an immense joy. I attended every appointment, every ultrasound. I saw that little dot transform into my boy. Henry was born strong, healthy, 8 pounds 8 ounces, the happiest day of my life. I cried like a child when I held him in my arms for the first time, that little red face, those squinted eyes, those hands closed in a fist. I promised myself that I would do everything so he would never go through the difficulties I went through. The sacrifices for the family were many, but made with an open heart. When Henry was 2 years old, Helen got sick, breast cancer. It was a battle of 3 years, expensive treatments, imported medicines, private doctors, everything that the health insurance didn't cover. I found a way. I worked overtime at the bank, sold vacation time, took out a loan, came home, and still took care of the boy so she could rest. Sleepless nights at the hospital, holding her hand, saying that everything would be fine, even when the doctors no longer gave hope. Helen passed away when Henry was 5 years old. A part of me went with her, but I couldn't give in to sadness. I had a little boy to raise. My mother helped me a lot during this time. She stayed with the boy while I worked. I learned to cook simple dishes, to wash clothes, to tell stories before bedtime. I tried to be both father and mother at the same time. The assets I managed to build over the years came with a lot of sweat. After I was widowed, I dedicated myself even more to work, because I wanted to ensure a comfortable future for Henry. As a bank manager, I began to invest more intelligently. First, I bought the house in Bexley, a 2-story with 3 bedrooms, a small yard, but with space for Henry to play. Then, years later, I managed to buy an apartment to rent out, an extra source of income that went entirely into my son's savings. I invested in treasury bonds, in some conservative funds, always thinking about the long term. I was never one to take too many risks. I preferred safety. Every promotion at the bank, every annual bonus, went straight into investments. I lived modestly for the position I held. Basic car that I only replaced when necessary, durable clothes instead of designer brands, simple vacations, usually at relatives' houses in the country, all to save money. When Henry entered law school, I already had a good amount accumulated, the house fully paid off, 2 rented apartments, a small cottage in Delaware County that I bought thinking about retirement, and a good financial reserve. It seemed that all the sacrifices had been worth it. My son was graduating in a respectable profession. I had financial security and was planning a peaceful retirement. The first signs that something was changing in Henry started when he entered college. Suddenly, clothes from regular stores were not enough. They had to be brand name. The cell phone was never good enough. He always wanted the latest release. He began to hang out with a different crowd, children of judges, prosecutors, businessmen. I noticed that he began to be ashamed of our house. He rarely brought friends over. When he talked about me, he rarely mentioned that I was a banker. He would vaguely say that I was in the financial market. Once, riding in his car with a friend, I heard when the young man asked what I did. Henry replied, "He's an investor, he manages assets." I stayed quiet, but that bothered me. Why be ashamed of a father who is a bank manager? It was the first sign that my son was changing, moving away from his roots, wanting to appear to be what we weren't. At the time, I ignored it. I thought it was a young person's thing, a phase of self-assertion. Little did I know that it was just the beginning of a transformation that would culminate in the saddest and most humiliating day of my life. The problems began to get more serious when Henry met Barbara at law school. She was the daughter of Judge Margaret, a retired federal judge, and Mr. Herbert, a former FBI agent, a traditional Columbus family. A heavyweight surname, a house in Upper Arlington, that affluent area of the city. Right away, I realized that their world was very different from ours. I remember the first time Henry brought Barbara to dinner at our house. I had made my famous chicken stroganoff, a recipe I learned from my late wife. I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth that we used for special occasions. I took out of the cabinet the set of plates that was kept for Christmas. I wanted to make a good impression. Barbara arrived all dressed up. Designer clothes that you could see from afar. A purse that cost more than my monthly salary. Strong perfume. Polite, I can't deny, but with that manner of someone who is doing a favor by being there. When I served dinner, she looked at the plate and asked if there wasn't a vegetarian option. I was embarrassed. I didn't know she didn't eat meat. Henry, instead of defending me, was visibly embarrassed. "Dad, I told you Barbara doesn't eat meat," he said, in an irritated tone that cut my heart. He had never told me anything about this. I offered a salad, rice, what I had in the refrigerator. She accepted, but the mood was already strange. During dinner, she asked about my profession. When I said I was a bank manager, but that I was already retired, she made a face of disinterest and changed the subject. Later, when I showed some old pictures of Henry as a child, she barely looked, always checking her phone. My son, who always liked to hear stories from his childhood, now seemed ashamed of those memories. That dinner was just the beginning. Over time, Henry began to change even more. The visits to his father on Sundays became rarer. The phone calls, which were once almost daily, became weekly, then bi-weekly. When he did call, it was always hurried, always with excuses to hang up soon. "Dad, I'm in an important meeting." "Dad, we'll talk later. I'm with Barbara at the mall." "Dad, I can't have dinner there today. I'm going to my father-in-law's birthday." I noticed that he began to refer to Barbara's house as our house, even before they made anything official. My house where he grew up became your house in his mouth, as if he were just a visitor. When I turned 70, I organized a simple lunch. I invited the few relatives I still have alive, some friends from the bank, old neighbors. I notified Henry 2 months in advance. The night before, he called me. "Dad, it's going to be hard to show up tomorrow. Barbara has a family event and I need to accompany her." His voice was cold, distant. "Son, it's my 70th birthday. Can't you come for a little while? Everyone asked about you." I tried not to sound desperate, but I think I failed. Silence on the other end. Then a sigh of impatience. "I'll see what I can do." The next day, he didn't show up. He sent a generic message, one of those with an animated GIF wishing happy birthday. That night I cried like I hadn't since Helen's death. It was around this time that Henry told me he was going to propose to Barbara. I was happy for him, of course, despite all the changes. After all, he's my son, blood of my blood. If he was happy, I would be too. He invited me to a dinner at her parents' house, where he would make the official proposal. The mansion of her family was imposing, one of those with a garden in front. High-wall intercom with camera. I dressed the best I could. My navy blue suit that I saved for special occasions. Tie that Henry gave me one Christmas long ago. Well-polished shoes. I brought a bottle of wine, not an expensive one, but a good one. One of those that I kept for important moments. When I arrived, everyone was already there. Judge Margaret, always with that superior manner. Mr. Herbert, a little more friendly but still intimidating. They greeted me with quick, dry handshakes. Barbara gave me a kiss on the cheek out of pure formality. Henry seemed tense, as if my presence made him uncomfortable. During dinner, the conversation revolved around topics that I could barely follow. They talked about international travels, expensive restaurants, influential people they knew. I stayed more quiet, only answered when they asked something directly, which was rare. At one point, Mr. Herbert asked about my finances, just like that, in front of everyone. "So, Mr. Johnson, have you already planned your retirement? Do you have solid investments? The question came loaded with a tone that seemed more like an evaluation than genuine interest. Before I could fully answer, Henry interrupted. Dad, no need to get into financial details now, and changed the subject. I noticed the look of disapproval that Barbara gave him. After dinner, when Henry made the official proposal and gave the ring, an expensive jewel that I later discovered he had taken out a loan to buy, we toasted with champagne. It was at this moment that Judge Margaret brought up the subject of the wedding itself. We're thinking of something befitting our family, she said, looking directly at me. The Columbus Country Club would be the ideal location, don't you think, for about 500 to 600 guests. I choked on the champagne. 600 guests. That would cost a fortune. Henry, noticing my discomfort, quickly said, "We'll talk about this later," calmly. On the way home in the car, I asked Henry how he planned to pay for a wedding of that size. Dad, they expect something like this. Barbara has been dreaming of this since she was a child. He seemed nervous, gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. But son, a wedding of this size costs a fortune. You just graduated and are starting your career. I know, Dad. I know. He raised his voice, something he rarely did with me. That's why I'm going to need your help. The request came without beating around the bush. He wanted me to pay for the wedding, all of it, the ceremony, the reception, everything. I argued that we didn't need something so grandiose, that a more intimate wedding could be even more meaningful. I suggested using part of the money to help them buy an apartment, something more practical. Dad, you don't understand. Barbara's family has a name to uphold in Columbus. Everyone will be there, judges, prosecutors, FBI agents, businessmen. It's my chance to make important connections for my career. That night, I couldn't sleep well. On one hand, I wanted to see my son happy. On the other, I felt that something was deeply wrong. The next day, Henry brought up the subject again, this time with Barbara by his side. They had made a preliminary budget, $250,000. I almost choked when I saw the amount. It was practically all my savings for old age. Son, it's a lot of money. It's almost everything I've saved in life. Barbara intervened with that tone of superiority. Mr. Johnson, think about Henry's future. This wedding will open doors that you can't even imagine for his career. Besides, what father doesn't dream of giving a beautiful wedding for his son? At that moment, looking into her eyes, I felt something strange, like a warning. But the love for my son spoke louder. I ended up agreeing on the condition that it would be my gift to them, and that after this they would have to manage on their own. Both enthusiastically agreed. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Henry and Barbara barely consulted me about the decisions. They just presented me with the bills to pay. Expensive caterer, extravagant decoration, live band, DJ, open bar with imported drinks, luxury favors. Each time a new expense emerged, my heart tightened, but I took a deep breath and signed the check. After all, it was for my son. 2 weeks before the wedding, I went to the club to follow up on some final details. When I arrived, the event planner received me with a tense smile. "Mr. Johnson, good that you came. We need to clarify some points." She opened a folder full of documents. "Your son requested some additional changes that were not in the original contract. A larger screen, extra flowers, 2 more hours of party. The additional amount was almost $30,000. I took a deep breath, feeling the blood boil in my temples. I called Henry right away. "Son, what's this about another $30,000? We didn't agree on this." "It's just some little details to make the party perfect, Dad. Barbara deserves the best. And I don't deserve respect? It's almost all the money from my retirement that's disappearing." Silence on the other end. Then the cold voice. "If you can't pay, just say so. Barbara's family can take over, and then we'll see how to reimburse you for what you've already spent." Those words hit me like a slap. My son was threatening to exclude me from his wedding if I didn't pay more. I swallowed the hurt and pride. "No, son, I'll pay. Just let me know before making any changes, please." He hung up without saying goodbye. I signed the authorization for the changes and returned home with a heavy heart. In the week of the wedding, Henry hardly appeared at my house. When he called, it was only to confirm if such and such payment had been made. In one of these calls, I asked about my place in the ceremony. "Son, how will it be in the church? Will I walk with you?" "Oh, Dad, I forgot to tell you, I'm going to walk with the best man. It's that Barbara's father is going to walk with her, so we thought it best to balance, understand?" Another stab. Traditionally, the father of the groom should walk with the mother of the groom, or with the mother of the bride, if the mother of the groom had already passed away, as was our case. But I was being completely left out. "And where will I sit during the ceremony?" "In the first row, of course," he replied quickly, as if it were obvious, but something in his tone didn't convince me. The day before the wedding, I went to the rental shop to pick up my tuxedo. I had rented one. I didn't want to spend more money buying one. The tailor, Mr. Jack, who had known me for years, handed me the clothes with a sad smile. "Mr. Johnson, I heard your son's wedding is going to be beautiful, but they say around here that you're not going to participate in the ceremony. Is that true?" I felt a chill in my stomach. "What do you mean I'm not going to participate? Of course I am. I'm the father of the groom." Mr. Jack became embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. It's just that I heard your son and the bride talking here last week, when they came to pick up the final adjustments to his tuxedo. They were saying something about keeping you away and only letting you in the reception afterwards. I thought it was strange, that's why I asked." I returned home devastated with 1,000 thoughts in my head. Could my own son be planning to exclude me from the wedding that I myself was paying for? It must be some misunderstanding. I tried to call him several times that day, but he didn't answer. I sent a message and he only replied very late at night. "Dad, everything is fine. We'll talk tomorrow. Sleep well." On the morning of the wedding, I woke up early, took a long shower, shaved carefully, put on my rented tuxedo. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 71-year-old man, white hair, tired eyes, but still with dignity. I didn't have money for a private car, so I called a taxi to take me to the Columbus Country Club. The wedding was scheduled for 7 p.m., but I arrived at 6:30, wanting to make sure I would be there to greet guests, along with the bride's parents. When the taxi stopped at the entrance of the club, I was impressed with the decoration. Lights throughout the garden, red carpet, huge flower arrangements, all paid for with my sweat, with my life savings. As I got out of the taxi, I saw Henry in the distance talking with Barbara's father and other men who seemed important. I waved, but he pretended not to see. I walked towards the group, adjusting my tie, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. That's when it happened. When I was a few meters from the group, Henry finally saw me. Our eyes met. I expected to see joy, gratitude, emotion in my son's eyes on his wedding day. Instead, I saw panic, then anger. He said something quickly to the other men and approached me with quick, almost aggressive steps. "Dad, what are you doing here now?" His voice was low but loaded with irritation. "What do you mean, son? It's your wedding. I came early to help you greet the guests." I smiled, trying to ease the tension I felt. "Didn't I tell you to come straight to the ceremony only at 7 p.m.? He looked around, nervous, as if he were ashamed to be seen with me. "No, son, you didn't say anything like that." I began to feel a tightness in my chest that wasn't just emotional. "I'm your father. I paid for all of this. Of course I'm going to be by your side from the beginning." It was then that his face changed, an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of contempt and anger. He came closer, almost whispering, "Look, Dad, you better leave now and come back at 7:30 for the reception. The ceremony is only for family and close friends." I felt as if I had taken a punch to the stomach. "But I am your family, I'm your father." He looked around again, visibly bothered by the conversation. "Dad, please don't make a scene. We already have an agreement. Let's not go back to this now." "What agreement? We never agreed on anything like this." My voice came out louder than I intended, drawing the attention of some nearby people. That's when the club's security guard approached, a tall, strong man with a black suit and an earpiece. "Any problem, mister?" "Henry," he asked, looking at me as if I were an intruder. What happened next still hurts me to recall. Henry, my only son, looked at the security guard and said loud and clear, Don't let this old man in. He's not invited. He's an intruder." The shock was so great that I could barely breathe. The people around stopped to look, some whispering, others with expressions of surprise or pity. The security guard grabbed my arm forcefully. "Out, old man," he ordered, pulling me away from the entrance. "I'm his father," I shouted, trying to free myself. "I paid for all of this. I paid." The security guard hesitated for a moment, looking at Henry for confirmation. And that's when I heard the laughter. My son was laughing at the situation. Beside him, Barbara had appeared and was filming everything with her cell phone, a malicious smile on her face. "Kick him harder! Get this trash out!" shouted Henry. To the horror of some guests who were already arriving, the security guard, encouraged and confused, kicked me in the ribs. The pain was immediate, intense. I fell to the ground, hitting my head on the marble step of the entrance. I felt the warm blood running down my forehead, the metallic taste in my mouth. From where I was lying, I looked up and saw my son, in the expensive suit that I had paid for, hugging his bride, both laughing at my humiliation. A second kick came to my back, then a third to my stomach, each accompanied by laughter and exclamations of approval from my own son. The security guard then grabbed me by the hair, the same white hair that Henry pulled when he was a child, playing horseback riding, and began to drag me across the rough sidewalk. My rented tuxedo tore in contact with the cement. My skin burned with the scrapes. I was thrown into the street like a garbage bag. "Old beggar" was the last thing I heard before feeling a strong dizziness. There, fallen in the street, with blood on my face and pain throughout my body, a young valet ran to me. Unlike my son, that stranger showed compassion. "Sir, you're bleeding a lot." He took off his jacket and put it under my head while calling an ambulance on his cell phone. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the sound of party music beginning to play inside the club. The wedding I paid for was starting without me. I woke up in the ICU of Columbus General Hospital. The doctor later explained to me that I had 3 broken ribs, head trauma, and internal bleeding that almost killed me. I spent 3 days between life and death, sedated, intubated, fighting to survive. In the moments of consciousness, I expected to see my son there, repentant, asking for forgiveness, but the chair next to the bed remained empty. No one from the party came to visit me, no distant relative, no old friend, no one. The only one who appeared regularly was the young valet, Raphael, who had come to my aid. He would come after his shift, bring a fruit, a magazine, and stay talking for a while, even though I could barely respond. On the 5th day, when they finally transferred me to a regular room, I managed to get my cell phone that was stored with my belongings. I had dozens of notifications, but none from Henry. Friends and acquaintances asking what had happened, why I wasn't at my son's wedding if everything was okay, but from my son, total silence. "Sir, you were lucky," said the nurse when she checked my vital signs that afternoon. "We almost lost you. Is there someone to pick you up when you're discharged, family?" I shook my head negatively, feeling a pain that wasn't physical. The nurse gently squeezed my hand in a gesture of compassion that moved me. That night, alone in the hospital room, I began to review old messages on my cell phone, a habit I've always had. I never delete messages. Helen used to say that I was a digital hoarder. Maybe I was, but at that moment, this habit would prove to be my salvation. I began to look in the conversations with Henry. I wanted to understand when my son had changed so much, when he had become that person capable of having his own father beaten. I went back months, years in the conversations, and that's when I found something that I had completely forgotten. Henry always complained about his mother-in-law, Judge Margaret. From the beginning of his relationship with Barbara, he would vent to me about how difficult, demanding, controlling she was. I always advised patience. I said that every mother-in-law is protective, that with time things would improve, but apparently for Henry things only got worse. I found screenshots of conversations from almost 2 years ago that he himself sent me complaining about her. "Dad, this Margaret is unbearable. Yesterday at dinner she spent the whole night correcting my way of holding the silverware. Who does she think she is? Ugly old toad. She looks like a bloated frog and still thinks she's the last cookie in the jar. She thinks she's all that because she's a judge. Big deal. I know street criminals with more class than her." The screenshots were shocking in their virulence. There were dozens of them saved on my phone that Henry sent me in moments of anger. In many, he talked about her appearance in a cruel way, mocked her profession, said horrible things. I'm only marrying Barbara because her mother is trash. I can't wait for her to die. When the old woman kicks the bucket, I'm going to piss on her grave, I swear to God. And the audio messages were even worse. Henry would send recordings mimicking his mother-in-law with a squeaky, caricatured voice. Look how the old witch talks. Henry, that's not the salad fork. Laughs, ridiculous. The robe slut thinks she's powerful. Just because she sent a few poor devils to jail, she thinks she's the Queen of England. Retired, that's what she is. I bet she slept with half the court to get where she got. In one of the audio messages, he called his mother-in-law an aberration and laughed, imitating the way she walked, mocking her hair, her clothes, everything. There were also videos of him doing these imitations, always sending them to me as a vent, always laughing at the end. There, lying in that hospital bed, with pain throughout my body, something woke up inside me. A cold, calculated anger, different from anything I had ever felt. Henry had humiliated me, assaulted me, almost killed me. He deserved a lesson that I had just discovered how to give. With trembling hands, more from physical weakness than hesitation, I picked up the phone and called Judge Margaret. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. To my surprise, she answered on the second ring. Judge Margaret, this is Robert Johnson. My voice came out weak, still affected by the tubes that had been removed from my throat. Henry's father, I added when she took time to respond. Mr. Johnson, it's a bit late for social calls. How can I help you? You need to see some things about Henry, about what he thinks of you. There was a silence on the other end. Then, what are you talking about? I'm going to send you some messages. Please see them all. Then call me back. I hung up and began to gather everything I had. The 47 most offensive screenshots, the 23 audio messages where he directly insulted her, the 8 videos where he imitated her in a humiliating way. I made a package with everything and sent it through text message. The phone rang again, almost instantly. It was her. Is there more? The voice now had a different tone, something between anger and shock. Much more. I'm in the hospital. Fractured ribs, head trauma. Your son-in-law had me beaten at the door of the wedding that I paid for, $250,000, all from my pocket. Silence on the other end. Then, send more. Send everything you have. I continued sending each message, each audio, each video. At this point, the wedding must have been in full swing, the party that I paid for, from which I was expelled with kicks. An hour later, my phone rang again. It was Barbara. You old son of a... she screamed as soon as I answered. What did you do? I responded with a calmness that I didn't know I had. I showed the truth, that's all. You destroyed everything. Everything, she sobbed with rage. No, my dear. Who destroyed everything was your husband when he had me beaten. I'm in the hospital. I almost died. Tell him that. I hung up and laid my head on the pillow, exhausted, but strangely at peace. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I was sure that Judge Margaret had taken some action. The next morning, I received a visit from a police officer. He was a young officer who identified himself as Mr. Herbert's nephew, Barbara's father. He brought a tablet. Mr. Johnson, my uncle asked me to show you this. He thought you'd like to see it. On the tablet, there was a video being live-streamed on Instagram. Someone was filming what was happening in the hall of the Columbus Country Club. The party, apparently, had turned into chaos. In the video, I saw Judge Margaret on the main stage, microphone in hand, an expression of controlled fury on her face. The hall was in absolute silence. Attention, everyone, her voice echoed through the speakers. I just discovered what Henry really thinks of me. She made a gesture, and a technician connected a phone to the sound system of the hall. Suddenly, Henry's voice echoed loud and clear. Ugly old toad, looks like a bloated frog. There was a murmur of shock among the guests. The camera focused on Henry's face, pale as paper, mouth open in panic. Another audio. Retired, that's what she is. I bet she slept with half the court. More murmurs, some shouts of indignation. Barbara was beside Henry, hand on her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Judge Margaret then connected the phone to a huge screen that descended from the ceiling. Suddenly, Henry's messages were being displayed in giant letters. "Margaret is trash, ugly old woman. I can't wait for her to die." The 600 invited people watched in shocked silence. The camera showed the exact moment when Barbara fainted, falling to the floor like a rag doll. The videos of Henry mimicking his mother-in-law began to be shown on the big screen, his voice amplified by the sound system. It was a complete public humiliation, meticulously orchestrated by the retired judge. "And you know what's worse?" Judge Margaret's voice returned, trembling with anger. "His father, who paid $250,000 for this party, is at this moment in the hospital. Because this man," she pointed to Henry, "had the security guards beat his own father at the entrance of this club." The camera showed horrified faces, people whispering, others rising from their seats indignant. "Look, look," she shouted, showing on the screen a photo of me, bloodied, being placed in the ambulance. Someone must have recorded the moment. "This is how this man treats the father who gave everything for him." Mr. Herbert, the retired FBI agent, rose from his table. His face was red with anger. He walked up to Henry, who seemed frozen in place. "Wedding cancelled," shouted Judge Margaret, tearing what appeared to be the marriage certificate not yet signed. "My daughter is not marrying a monster." Barbara, who had been revived, began to vomit violently on her wedding dress. Henry was trying to say something, but no one was listening to him. The confusion was total. In the video, I saw guests getting up and leaving, embarrassed groomsmen trying to calm people down, the priests who were in a corner making the sign of the cross and refusing to continue with any ceremony. Barbara, between sobs, was shouting, "I hate you! How could you say those things about my mother? How could you do this to your father?" And then came the final moment. Ombra. Herbert, using all his authority as an FBI agent, even retired, approached Henry with a pair of handcuffs. "Henry Johnson, you are under arrest for the crimes of assault on an elderly person, serious bodily injury, and attempted homicide against Robert Johnson." The handcuffs closed on the wrists of my son, still dressed in his groom's tuxedo. Two uniformed police officers, probably called by Mr. Herbert, escorted him out of the hall among the looks of contempt and horror from the guests. The police officer who was showing me the video turned off the tablet. "My uncle asked me to tell you that he will visit you later today, and that you shouldn't worry. Your son will pay for what he did." At that moment, lying in the hospital bed, I felt a confusing mixture of emotions. Sadness for the son I had lost long before that night, relief for justice being done, pain, not just physical, but of the soul, for seeing the point to which we had come. That same day, I received a call from the wedding caterer. "Mr. Johnson, your son didn't pay the second agreed-upon part. What should we do?" "Sue him. I have a receipt that I paid for everything, and he kicked me out. Use the video as evidence." The weeks that followed were of slow recovery. I had to undergo 3 surgeries, one to fix the ribs, another to relieve pressure in the skull, and a third to repair internal damage. I was left with permanent sequelae. To this day, I walk with a cane. I have chronic pains that no medicine completely alleviates. Henry was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He lost his bride, obviously. Her family completely broke off any contact. He ended up owing $250,000 to the caterer, who filed a lawsuit for breach of contract and fraud. But the worst for him, perhaps, was becoming a national meme. The groom who beat his father was what they called him on social media, on TV shows everywhere. After 6 months, when I was already at home recovering, he asked to visit me. I went to the prison, walking with difficulty, leaning on my cane. When I saw him through the glass, wearing a prisoner's uniform, deep dark circles under his eyes, disheveled hair, something inside me broke again. "Dad, forgive me," he cried as soon as he sat down. That man who had laughed while I bled now begged for forgiveness. I lifted my shirt, showing the scars from the surgeries. "Does this forgive?" I asked without anger, just stating a fact. "It was a joke. I didn't want them to really hurt you." His voice was desperate. 3 broken ribs is a joke. A head trauma is a joke. You laughed while I bled, Henry. He lowered his head, sobbing. There wasn't much more to say. He had made his choices. Now he lived with the consequences. The trump card I had, those screenshots, audio messages and videos stored for years on my phone, wasn't something I had planned to use. I never imagined that my own son would betray me that way. But when the betrayal came, I had the luck, or perhaps the misfortune, of having exactly what I needed for a response in kind. Beyond the digital files, I had a powerful ally that I didn't even know I had. Judge Margaret herself, who before treated me with indifference, became an ally in the pursuit of justice. As a retired judge, she knew exactly which laws had been broken and how to proceed. Through her, I got the best legal team to sue my son, the security guard who assaulted me, and the club itself that allowed the attack. Mr. Herbert, as an FBI agent, ensured that the case was treated with the seriousness it deserved, without favoritism or cover-ups. He personally supervised the investigation, ensuring that all evidence was properly collected. The videos that guests made of my assault, along with the recordings of the club's security cameras, provided irrefutable evidence of the crime. The testimony of young Raphael, the valet who came to my aid, was crucial to establish the gravity of the situation and my son's indifference. The guests, horrified by what they saw both at the entrance of the club and later on the big screen, became voluntary witnesses. Many were influential people in the city, judges, lawyers, businessmen, and their collective indignation ensured that the case received maximum attention. The hospital doctors meticulously documented each injury, each surgery, each sequela. The medical reports made it clear that I could have died if not for the rapid medical attention. When all these elements came together, Henry's conviction was inevitable. There was no deal, no reduction in sentence. He faced the full force of the law, aggravated by the fact that he had assaulted an elderly person, his own father. For me, the execution of this justice plan brought no joy. Each testimony I gave, each document I signed, each hearing I attended, hurt me deeply. It was my son there, blood of my blood, but it was also the man who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, who had mocked my suffering, who had wasted everything I built in life. The consequences for Henry went beyond prison. He was expelled from the Bar Association for unbecoming conduct. No respected law firm would accept him afterwards. His career that he valued so much was destroyed before it truly began. Judge Margaret's video, exposing the audio messages and messages at the wedding, went viral. Millions of people saw, shared, commented. Henry became a symbol of ingratitude, of cruelty, of everything that is wrong in the relationship between parents and children these days. The reaction from Barbara's family was quick and definitive. The wedding, of course, was cancelled on the spot. Judge Margaret, in addition to exposing Henry on the big screen, filed a lawsuit for moral damages against him. Mr. Herbert, using his contacts in the police, ensured that the case was investigated with maximum rigor. Barbara, destroyed by the public humiliation, moved abroad. According to what I heard, she went to live with an aunt in Switzerland, wanting distance from everything that reminded her of that fateful night. The other guests, many of whom I didn't even know well, reacted with shock and indignation. The people who before had been impressed with the luxury and ostentation of the wedding now commented on the tragedy, the scandal, the horror. What should have been the happiest day in my son's life became his worst nightmare, his complete ruin. And all because of text message screenshots stored on the phone of an old father who never imagined he would need to use them. Today I'm 73 years old and carry the marks of that night in my body and soul. I walk with a cane. I have chronic pains that wake me in the middle of the night, and I know I will carry these sequelae until my last day. My son left prison after serving his sentence, but what he lost cannot be recovered with freedom. No one in Columbus wants to hire the guy who kicked his father at the wedding. I heard from acquaintances that he lives on odd jobs, lives in a small rented room in the outskirts, and even changed his name on social media, trying to escape the past that he himself built. Sometimes on the quietest nights, I wonder where I went wrong. Was I too much of a father, giving everything without teaching the value? Or too little of a father, working so much that I didn't see the signs that something was wrong? The truth is that there is no simple answer. Each child is a mystery. Each family has its invisible wounds. After everything, I sold the house in Columbus. It had too many memories, most of them now stained with sadness. I bought a simple little house in Delaware County, near my small cottage. I live a quiet life, growing my vegetables, raising some chickens, receiving visits from the few friends I kept. Raphael, that valet who came to my aid, comes to have lunch with me every first Sunday of the month. He's become almost a foster son. He helps me with the heavy things, takes me to the doctor when I need it. He's an engineering graduate now, married with a little daughter who calls me Grandpa Bob. Judge Margaret and Mr. Herbert, surprisingly, keep in touch. At first it was because of the lawsuits, but then it turned into an unlikely friendship. Once a month we played dominoes on the porch of my house, having coffee with cornbread that I learned to make. They are different people than I imagined, more human, less intimidating when you really get to know them. Henry tried to contact me a few times after he got out of prison. He sent letters, tried to call. For a long time I didn't respond. The wound was too open, but last Christmas I allowed him to visit me. It was a brief encounter, embarrassed, full of heavy silences. He seemed smaller somehow, aged beyond his 41 years, with his eyes always down, unable to meet mine. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him completely. Maybe it's not even necessary. What happens between father and son sometimes doesn't fit into the simple words of forgiveness or resentment. It's more complex, deeper. What I know is that I no longer nurture anger. That's already something. Life has taught me that justice and revenge are different things, although they sometimes get confused. What I did that night, exposing Henry's messages to his mother-in-law, was a bit of both. It was justice because he deserved to face the consequences of his actions. It was revenge because a part of me wanted him to suffer as I had suffered. I'm not proud of that part, but I don't deny it either. We are all humans with our lights and shadows. If there's one lesson I carry from this whole story, it's about the value of dignity. Money comes and goes, weddings happen and end, but dignity, once lost, is difficult to recover. Henry sacrificed his on the altar of appearances, social acceptance, status. I almost sacrificed mine on the altar of unconditional father's love. In the end, I managed to rescue it, even though the price was too high. For those who are listening to me and have children, love them, take care of them, sacrifice yourself for them if necessary, but never, ever allow them to step on your dignity. True love does not require humiliation. And for the children who are listening, remember that your parents are human beings with feelings, with their own stories, with the right to be respected. Ingratitude is like a debt. It always comes back to collect interest. In Columbus, they say I'm the father of the $250,000 wedding that ended because of text messages. Some look at me with pity, others with admiration. For me, I'm just an old man who learned in the hardest way that sometimes blood ties are not a guarantee of anything. That sometimes true family is the one we build along the way, like Raphael, like the new friends I made, like the neighbors who take care of me when I need it. Life continues even after the worst storms. Ribs break and heal. The heart breaks, but finds new reasons to beat. And even an old man with a cane can find some peace, some joy in the little things, in the taste of fresh coffee in the morning, in the laughter of a child who calls him Grandpa, even without being his blood, in the satisfaction of looking back and, despite everything, not regretting having been who he was. Thank you for listening to me this far. If you liked it, leave your like and subscribe to Grandpa's Voice. If you watched until the end, comment the word dignity below. And don't forget to check out the other stories here on the channel. There are 2 right on the screen that you'll enjoy. A hug from this old man here,